For the Sith, betrayal was the name of the game. It was natural for the apprentice to one day rise up and take on the master. Darth Bane used this as a benefit, and remade the entire Sith Order around this concept. Weaponizing betrayal made the Sith strong, as each generation increased in either power or cunning. That was until Darth Sidious and Darth Vader. Had Anakin Skywalker not suffered his loss of flesh on Mustafar, he would not have been cut down to a mere 80% of Palpatine's power, and he most certainly would have overthrown Sidious, taking his place as the Emperor of the entire galaxy. But those ambitions fell through, and within his life support armor, Vader was unable to gain the strength to rise against him. Strangely, rather than finding an alternative, another way to overthrow Sidious, Vader sort of just accepted his lot in life. But it wasn't as though he didn't try before. But as far as we can tell, there are only 3 times in all of the lore where Vader planned to actively overthrow Sidious, which is a shockingly low number considering how long he was the Emperor's apprentice and the basis of the Rule of Two. So join us today as we open up another holocron and attempt to explore why Vader only ever made 3 attempts on his master's life before ultimately giving up, and why. Facing Darth Sidious head-on was never going to be an option for Vader. In the novel The Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader, we get a very intimate look into Vader's life and his suit. He describes in the book in detail how limiting his new body is. The cybernetic limbs were clunky and sometimes slow to respond to his commands. His armor is described as bulky and difficult to move in, and his chest plate made it so that he could scarcely lift his arms over his head without great difficulty. For the first few months, he had to summon the Force just to be able to walk without tipping over due to his raised boots. Wires and hooks snagged on bits of loose flesh, causing him pain and itching. And this wasn't getting into the messy details of what it was like living with tubes and wires penetrating his chest, forcibly pumping oxygen directly into his lungs. Just walking around and doing mundane tasks were a chore for Darth Vader. It took Vader several weeks before he was able to readjust his fighting style to fit his new body and cybernetics. During this first little while, Anakin internally accepted that he would never be able to face the Emperor. He was hardly able to take out a few Jedi at this time. Sidious had noticed these limitations in his apprentice, but did not believe that they were truly physical. Palpatine was under the impression that Vader's issues were a result of a mental blockage, and Sidious would resolve to remove that blockage by any means necessary, even if that required putting himself in danger. So he would proceed to test, to antagonize Vader, constantly making his life even more difficult to force him into pushing through these new limits. This did work, of course, and by the midpoint of Vader's first year, he was starting to operate at peak Jedi killing capacity. But despite his newfound strength and resolve in the dark side, it was apparent that Sidious still outclassed him. He was not able to outduel his master, nor match him in the Force. The Emperor seemed to have eyes and allies everywhere. Vader felt watched day and night by spies, royal guards, and the Emperor's hands. If he challenged Sidious directly, even to get revenge for all of the lies that were told to him, it would end in disaster. Vader understood that he would have to play the long game and be much more cunning if he were to move successfully against his master. It was late into 19 BBY when Darth Vader would be tempted to make his first big play. For a while now, he had been looking for a way to overthrow his master. At the moment, he was too afraid to attempt to put himself in new armor. The risk of the transfer process was too great, and he feared he would not survive being outside of his suit long enough for the procedure to work. And so, Vader sought an alternative method for increasing his power. Vader was drawn to an unknown desert moon. There, he followed rumors of an ancient power being discovered by pirates. When the Dark Lord arrived, he found a stasis casket that housed the dormant body of an old Republic Jedi by the name of Celeste Morne. She had been placed in stasis for over 4,000 years because she wore an ancient Sith amulet known as the Mur Talisman. This was a powerful artifact created by one of the founding members of the Sith Order, Mur. It was possessed by his undead spirit and carried the power to transform other beings into bloodthirsty monsters known as rat ghouls under the wearer's control. Celeste had sacrificed herself to wear it and imprisoned Mur's spirit within her own mind so that his terror would not reign free in the galaxy. And long ago, she allowed herself to be placed in stasis until a way to destroy the amulet could be discovered. Unfortunately, no method was ever found, and she was forgotten to history until this moment. Upon awakening, she quickly discovered from a nearby Imperial scientist that the Republic that she knew had fallen, that the Jedi were gone, and that the Sith ruled the galaxy. Devastated, the Jedi turned on Vader and attacked him with great fury. The Sith defended himself while attempting to reason with Celeste, believing that if she joined him, she could be useful in his plans against Palpatine. However, Mur's spirit was hissing in Celeste's ear, telling her to die and allowed the amulet to be passed to Vader. He saw this new Sith as a suitably strong host and wanted to be freed from Celeste's imprisonment. Vader would soon win this duel by disarming the ancient Jedi and ordered her to surrender or die. Holding her at blade point, the spirit of the ancient Dark Lord contacted Vader. He promised Vader great power, that if he took the talisman, he would have the ability to command great armies and could finally overthrow his master. Vader was granted a vision of him standing triumphant over a dead and a bleeding emperor. This was a very plausible option for the Dark Lord. Sidious always touted the power of the ancient Sith artifacts, so it only seemed fitting for Vader to begin using them against him. However, he pulled himself back from temptation when he realized that after killing Palpatine, he would only be kneeling before a brand new master, Carnus Mur. In effect, if he were to use the power of the amulet, he would be a slave to it, trading one master for another. At this thought, Vader eliminated the temptation to use the talisman's power and refused. Although this technically was not a blatant attempt, it is one of the only times we actually get in Legends where Vader seriously considers rising up against Sidious. Vader opted out of it, however, when he came to understand the treachery of Sith artifacts. Even to Sith themselves, using the power and knowledge of the ancients is dangerous business. The old Dark Lords were selfish and jealous creatures. They were not keen on passing their knowledge to new upstarts. So if one ever met a Sith spirit, one could expect to be manipulated and used. This is why only the most cunning of Dark Lords ever tangle with spirits, because when dealing with them, you basically had to outwit the devil himself. The artifacts they leave behind are equally as treacherous. Often these objects were created only to serve one master, and so when another attempts to usurp ownership, they can expect to pay a steep price. This was one of the first and only times Vader ever got mixed up in ancient artifacts, and this was the very reason he refused to ever bother with them. A wise choice in our opinion, because even Sidious was nearly killed by the ghost of Korriban when he went there demanding knowledge from them. But moving on, the next plan Vader formulated was taking on a secret apprentice of his own. It became clear to him that his own power would never be enough, and attempting to artificially boost it with something else always carried great risk. And so the natural course of action was to have a prodigy of his own to use against Sidious. If he could fight the Emperor alongside someone else, someone loyal, then together they stood a much better chance at usurping him. His opportunity came sometime after Celeste Morne, when Vader had returned to the world of Kashyyyk following rumors of a Jedi resistance leader. There he would fight through waves of Wookiee warriors and face down the Jedi Kento Merrick. During the duel, he sensed a greater presence in the Force nearby. Due to the power's magnitude, Vader believed Kento's master was hidden around and demanded to know his location. But when the Jedi told Vader that his master was already dead, Vader ended his life. But at that moment, his lightsaber was unexpectedly torn from his grasp by a very young boy, the Jedi's son, Galen Merrick. This was the presence that the Dark Lord had felt. He was shocked that such a small child carried so much power. When the Imperial arrives, they prepared to kill the boy, but Vader turned and executed his own men in order to silence all witnesses to this account. Vader would then proceed to train Galen Merrick in secret, giving him the codename of Starkiller. He was not trained exactly as a Sith Lord, but rather as a dark assassin, taking inspiration from the way that Dooku handled his acolytes such as Ventress. He was also candid with Starkiller about his purpose. One day, when he was ready, the two would rise up against the Emperor. This is rare for the Sith. Complete honesty. Darth Vader was fascinated by Galen's potential and did everything in his power to bring out its most destructive capabilities. He trained Starkiller to use his power at a constant 100% maximum. Every force push needed to carry the power of an RPG. His lightning would be as destructive as a thermal detonator. All of this was for one purpose. Vader had finesse, but lacked the power to take Sidious on. The raw power. And so Galen would fill that void of required energy. A blunt force instrument that could match Sidious's raw output, while Vader himself matched Palpatine's technique and planning. As a team, master and apprentice, Vader and Starkiller were two halves of the same whole. The one needed to undermine the Emperor's collective strength. For 17 years, Vader played the long game, focusing on training Galen. This is why we have such a long stretch of time where Vader doesn't attempt anything else against Sidious. He's laying low, allowing Palpatine to believe that he has accepted his place as his apprentice. In reality, Vader was a predator in waiting. He is gearing up for a massive payout that will come in the future. At last, he sent Starkiller on a series of tests to see if he was ready. Galen managed to take out Rom Koda, Kazdan Paratus, and Shak Ti without getting caught, proving his skill and his discretion. But unfortunately, Sidious has eyes and ears everywhere. He discovered Starkiller prematurely and arrived on Vader's Star Destroyer unannounced. He ordered the apprentice to kill Galen to end this scheme and prove loyalty. Starkiller pleaded with his master, telling him that now was the time for them to combine forces and to strike. But Vader was caught in the open. He had wanted to take the Emperor on his own terms, to set a time where he could get the drop on him. Perhaps right then would have been the correct time to act. But if Sidious had got the drop on the two of them, then that meant he had come prepared. Vader knew that the entire Imperial Navy was prepared to fire on the Star Destroyer in case anything went wrong. Either that, or assassins and royal guards were lurking around the corner, waiting for the Emperor's signal. It was not yet time, and the two of them were not yet ready. And Vader knew. Vader knew that his master did not move on anyone unless he was utterly prepared. And so Vader pretended to kill Galen by throwing him around the bridge and tossing him out of the viewport. His near 2 decades of planning and training seemed to go out the window literally. But luckily, the Dark Lord managed to act quickly. He rescued his apprentice from the vacuum of space and had him start acting against the Empire. Vader tasked Galen Marek with starting a rebel alliance that could keep Sidious's attention, while the two of them created a new opening. What Vader did not count on, though, was Galen Marek gaining feelings for his new friends, resenting Vader's abuse and embracing the light. When Starkiller stormed the Death Star, Vader found all of his plans crumbled to dust. He was forced to team up with Sidious to take out Galen instead of the other way around. Frustrated that his plans had come to ruin, Vader was not yet ready to give up on the Starkiller project. He went back to Kamino and had Galen Marek cloned. It took countless retries and subjects before a suitable clone was made of his old apprentice, the one he bred to be twice as powerful and twice as loyal as the original. He gave him actual Sith training this time, allowing him to know the real dark side and its secrets. But the memories of the original Starkiller prevailed in his mind, confusing him and leading him to rebel against his master again. Vader attempted with all of his might to subject Starkiller to his will, even kidnapping his loved one to use against him. But it all failed as the clone of Starkiller managed to use Vader's weaknesses against him. Following the failure of the Starkiller project, the Dark Lord accepted that all of the past 20 years had been a waste. Vader was out of contingencies. Pretty much all of his chips had been bet on Galen Marek, but that had ended with failure. Now realizing that he would truly be under his master's thumb, Vader resigns himself to his fate. His life and loyalty was to the Empire, to the dark side, and to his master. Sidious was just too powerful, and Vader was out of time. We believe that at this point, Vader slips into a sort of depression where he starts going through the motions. His power weakens slightly as the fire of ambition darkens. His inner heat is replaced by a cold apathy. He becomes more machine than man, more machine than Sith. But that all changes when Luke Skywalker gives him another reason to live. The rebel that destroyed the Death Star is revealed to be the son of Anakin Skywalker. Vader figures this out before Palpatine does, and is both infuriated at his master's lies and excited for his future. Now there is a real chance, an apprentice of his own blood. Sidious, of course, discovers the truth through his own visions and orders Vader to take care of it. But the Dark Lord, having learned from his past mistakes, once again decides to play the long game. He manipulates Sidious by implying that he could turn Luke to the dark side, making him an asset for the two of them. By now, Sidious had little reason to suspect that Vader was really wanting Luke for his own means. The Dark Lord had spent so many years fully resigned to his fate, he was now good at hiding his real intentions. He attempted to turn Luke to the dark side on Bespin by first torturing his friends, then instructing him to release his hatred in their duel. Afterwards, he mutilates the boy, before revealing the earth-shattering truth. Darth Vader is his father. But Luke was not like Anakin. He still had so much to live for and so much to care about. He did not turn and believed that death was preferable to embracing the dark. But even after the events of Cloud City, Vader never stopped attempting to pursue and to capture Luke. The obsession became so intense that Sidious began to suspect that there was more to this than meets the eye. Palpatine would go as far as to send his favorite assassin, Mara Jade, to spy on Vader and to kill Luke. Turning Luke to the dark side now mattered less to him than depriving his apprentice of a potential weapon. Now the race was on. Although neither Sith would admit it to the other, Vader and Sidious knew the same thing. They were both after Luke Skywalker. It was only a matter of who would bend him to the dark side first. On the second Death Star, Vader was intensely conflicted about his destiny and what he wanted for Luke. He wanted them both to strike down Sidious, but letting go of his old life and embracing the future was a terrifying prospect. However, he was ready to bend Luke to his own whims. In the novelization for Return of the Jedi, it describes from Vader's perspective how proud he is of his son. He could tell the Emperor was terrified of Luke, and this gave him immense pleasure. But both Sith Lords underestimated the power of the light within Luke. He would be the one who would change things rather than be changed himself. Darth Vader did end up getting what he wanted in the end, but not all of how he pictured it happening. He and his son would not rise against the Sith Lord in a climactic duel of dark side powers, but rather, Vader would sacrifice himself out of love for Luke and of a hope for a better future. One without the Sith at all. In our opinion, it's really a shame that Vader didn't have any other contingencies or try more often than he did. As a Sith Lord, it's a bad idea to put all of your eggs in a single basket. The dark side is a notoriously treacherous energy and it's known to screw over its users. It's always a good idea to have multiple plans in place. This was how Sidious stayed ahead most of the time. Then again, it was very difficult to Vader to move around just because Sidious could see just about everything he was doing. The Emperor never trusted Vader as far as he could throw him, so he always had tabs on his comings and goings. It's likely that Vader knew this, which was why he only tried a few times before totally giving up. Also, I'm sure seeing 20 years of work go down the drain with Starkiller was also very demoralizing. But what do you think, my friends? Do you think Vader should have tried harder to overthrow Sidious, or would it have made things worse? As always, thank you guys so much for joining us as we do these lore dives, and if you want to see more videos like this one, then be sure to comment down below what other topics you want to see explored. Until next time, may the Force be with you, and have a great day.